Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with the knife video. Today I've got a comparison video. I really like doing comparisons, especially when they're two blades that I really love. And these two certainly fit the bill. This is a Zero Tolerance 0300. This is the Lionsteel SR1A. Both of these blades I think are very comparable because of the fact that they're both heavy-duty, hard-use folders. Their blade shapes are similar, so that I would say neither one of these is especially well suited to a combat environment. I would also say that there's, we start comparing sort of features and style. Both are very thick blades. Both are frame locks. Both are heavy-duty, overbuilt folders. They both even have lock bar stabilizers. I guess maybe this is just a lock bar stop on this side. Anyway, both very similar, and add to the fact that, I really think if you're looking for a hard-use folder, you'd want to consider both of these, but they're also very close in price. Both of them can be had for around $200, $220 brand new, and on the secondary market, again, they're going to be fairly similar in price, okay? So, I think a lot of people who are interested in hard-use folders are going to be looking at both of these blades. I know there are lots of other great ones out there, and we could talk about lots of others, but for today we're going to compare these two really cool blades. Okay, let's start off with size and weight, as we often do, and we'll go heaviest first. This is Zero Tolerance 0300. As I mentioned, it is 8 ounces. Okay, so it is a much heavier blade than the SR1. For that 8 ounces, you're getting 8 5/8 inches overall, 3.5 inches of blade, and 5 inches of handle. There's an extra 1/8 of an inch there, I know, just because of the way when you measure things, they don't always, you have to go from the highest point of the handle here, and so it doesn't always work exactly to add them up. All right. By the way, most marketing stuff from Zero Tolerance will list this as a 3 3/4 inch blade, which it is if you measure from here. Okay, so here's where the blade starts, and you measure up to here. You do get 3 3/4 inches. However, notice how the handle ramps up. And so I think most jurisdictions, Canada, they don't care about blade length, but in most jurisdictions where they do, they measure from the highest point on the handle, which is up here, and that's where you get your 3.5 inches from, okay? So that's the size and weight on this. It is a very bulky blade, okay? There's no getting around. This is a heavy knife. Now, I think you're getting a lot for that weight, and so for me it's justified, but for you it might not be. On the other hand, the SR1A is 5.6 ounces, which is much more doable in terms of EDC. Certainly it's heavier than even a lot of popular everyday carry blades that we've looked at even on my channel, but I think for that weight, you're getting a pretty stout folding knife, okay? You've got a lot of D2 blade steel here. You've got a full single piece of aluminum for your handle. And so this is going to be, for your 5.6 ounces, you're getting a lot of blade. Blade length on this is 3.5 inches. So it's essentially the same blade length as the 0300. The handle length is only 4 5/8. So it is shorter overall by about 3/8 of an inch. Most of that is made up in the handle and in the overall construction or overall design, okay? We could probably say this one's a little more efficient in terms of blade to handle ratio, okay? Although not that much, because remember that the Zero Tolerance carries its blade all the way down here. So you get a fair bit of cutting edge, all right? Now, the way these two compare in terms of size and weight, obviously this one is much heavier. Certainly the SR1 carries more easily, okay? It's thinner. Put them side by side here in a second so I get them close. You can see that the SR1 is considerably thinner, actually in both dimensions. Part of that is the flipper here, which, obviously when we talk about deployment, the SR1 does not have, but overall, the SR1 is just smaller in every dimension, even though in terms of actual opened size, in terms of blade length and ability, they're very close, okay? I'd say overall the win in this category probably goes to the SR1. It's easier to carry. You're not getting, it's not like you're getting a much smaller blade. You're still getting pretty much all the capability in terms of blade size and shape and everything else, but you're getting it in a lighter, smaller package. And I'd say the SR1 is just as tough as well. So, that's size and weight. Let's move on to the blade, okay? So the blade shape on the SR1 is a typical, fairly typical drop point. It is a very exaggerated belly. You know, a typical blade would do something more like that, where this belly would be more swept back. The SR1 has a long flat portion and then all the belly right up here at the front, okay? Not a bad blade shape, not very good for any kind of thrusting type of motion. Good for any kind of, good for slicing, but not good for thrusting. Not good overall for slicing this blade because it's very, very thick and that grind is extremely abrupt, okay? So you got a real wedge on your hands here. That does create a bit of a limitation. However, for most of the things I think you're going to use this blade for, it's not going to be a problem. So blade on this is D2 steel. It is a very high flat grind. Very well done on the back spine. It's nice and rounded, so that means if you get your thumb out here for any kind of detailed work, it's very comfortable. It is extremely thick. You know, you've got over an eighth of an inch of D2 steel here. And by the way, D2 steel, as you know, is one of my favorites. Now, it's not a stainless steel, so there is a potential for corrosion, although many people would call it a semi-stainless. That means it doesn't rust easily, but it will rust, okay? So be aware of that. The coating obviously helps, but if you own a blade that's in D2 steel, you probably want to put some oil on it on a pretty regular basis, okay? Keep it well maintained so that you don't start having issues with rust. As I said before, now this is going to be a very, very strong blade. You know, if you do have to pry with a knife, or you know, if you've seen people do the tests where they stab the knife into a piece of wood and stab it this way and pry the piece of wood out, you're not going to break this blade doing that, not in a million years. Okay. That said, there are some limitations there, and if you're going to try to slice up a tomato with this, you're going to find issues, okay? It's not a great slicer. Now, zero tolerance 0300, the blade stock in general is actually a little thinner. Now, it is S30V blade steel. S30V is a great steel. It's very corrosion resistant, okay? So you're not going to have any of the rust issues you might have with the D2. However, the properties in terms of, you know, ease of sharpening and edge retention and those kinds of things are going to be very similar, and I maybe would even give the edge to D2. Partially that's my own bias. I do really, really like D2. It's just because I have great experience with it. I can get it to a stupidly, ridiculously sharp edge, and it seems to hold that edge really, really well. And you say, Kevin, even better than S30V? S30V has great edge retention. I don't know. They're very similar, although in my experience, S30V is a little tougher to get that edge on. Okay, it's harder to get that razor hair-popping edge in again, this is my experience in S30V than it is in a D2. Now, so for that reason, although they're very similar, and you're going to have to pick, okay? You're getting much more, you're going to get great corrosion resistance here and less corrosion resistance there. In my mind, you're going to get a little better edge performance and toughness than S30V in the D2. So it's a bit of a trade-off, okay? More maintenance on the D2, you're going to have to oil it and make sure you take care of it a little more carefully than the S30V. And that again, if you're in a high humidity environment, if you're, you know, going into a situation where you're afraid of rust, hey, that may make the decision for you, okay? But this blade is going to have better corrosion resistance and almost equal, if not, you know, we could debate all day about the performance of these two steels. Very, very close, okay? Now, in terms of blade shape, the 0300 is just a little more practical, and there are a couple of reasons why. One, you've got this recurve, which is great for any kind of whittling work. Two, you've got this belly. The belly, I think they've done a little better job on the 0300. You've got a bit more distance here. The belly is moved back a little further. It's not quite as abrupt. That means if you're cutting on any kind of flat surface, you've got a nice good portion of blade to work with right there, okay? I'm trying to be careful so I don't cut myself. But you can easily work on a flat surface like a cutting board or something with this blade. This one, if you can work on a flat surface, but it's all belly that you're cutting with. You've got very little flat edge to, let's say, cut up a carrot or banana or something. Okay. Now, the other thing is the 0300 is a thinner, flatter grind. So you've got less wedge effect in this blade than you do with this blade, which means it's going to be a it's going to be a better slicer, a considerably better slicer in my, I before doing this, just to be sure, I did a bunch of cutting with both of them at the same time, and even when slicing through, cutting, I was push into a piece of wood and just see how far I can push it in with sheer strength. The 0300 did bed further into that piece of wood because of that thinner edge profile, okay? Still not a great blade for food prep, but it's going to do a lot better than this. So if you're looking for a camp knife, the 0300 is going to be just a little bit better. Bushcrafting, they're going to be very, very similar, okay? And in fact, the SR1 may be slightly better for that particular application. Both are going to do well, though. Now, one thing I will say is about both of these blade shapes, I think either one of these, because they don't have a super sharp point, would be great blades for like an EMS worker or a firefighter or anyone who may have to cut around other people or around flesh. If your arm is tied in something and you want to slide your knife in there and cut it off, well, you probably don't want something like a Spyderco Zabo with a super, super sharp edge that could easily poke into your skin. Both of these knives are going to be pretty well suited for working around people where there's a risk of cutting yourself with that sharp tip. Neither one of them have a super, super sharp tip. Okay, so those are the blades. Which one wins? I really can't tell you. I love both of these blades. They both perform really, really well, and I think they'll serve very similar situations. They're gonna perform very, very close. Okay, how about lockup and deployment? All right, lockup and deployment. There are a few more differences. Again, they both seem to be doing some things better. I'm going to speak to the SR1 first. It is on Teflon washers. It deploys very well, but not quickly, okay? You're not going to get this out and flick it, or at least I can't flick it. Now, it does deploy very smoothly, very consistently, and when it locks up, there's a couple things happening here that I really like, okay? First one is, of course, the stainless steel lock bar insert. That's a real win. The possibility for locking that lock bar in place is there. You can just twist this little lock bar over this overextension stop, and it will lock that lock bar in place, which is a nice feature, but I never actually use it, okay? So, of course, it is a frame lock, and it's a very strong frame lock. It's fairly comfortable to disengage, and it pops into place with authority. Listen, hear that? So it's definitely very strong, very confidence-inspiring, and it's nice to see that stainless steel lock bar insert, as well as the over travel stop. 0300, still a frame lock. No lock bar insert here, although a lot of these later generations, now some of the later generations of 0300 do have a stainless steel lock bar insert here. Others have been carbidized. I really can't complain about this, although I do like the addition of the lock bar insert on the SR1. More current models of the 300, I think, have that stainless steel lock bar insert. It does have the lock bar stabilizer here, which not only keeps you from overextending the lock, but it reduces the distance of metal here that's under compression, therefore strengthening that lock just a little bit. Now, the main difference here is, of course, that the 0300 is assisted, so it's flying out very quickly. And that's an advantage in the situations where you may be using this knife. If you're an EMS worker, if you're a firefighter, police officer, something like that, you may be wearing gloves, you may be under a high stress situation. Knowing that your blade's going to come out with simply the movement of one finger, which I would say is a pretty gross motor skill, is very, very helpful. And I think when I reviewed this, I told the story of going out to my car. I had a bunch of stuff tied down in the back, and I couldn't get the knot undone. And my hands were getting colder and colder and colder as I'm trying to get this stupid thing undone. Well, I had this knife with me. It popped open, very easy to cut. Am I suggesting that had I had the SR1, I wouldn't have been able to get it open? Yeah, I probably would have been fine. However, the ease of opening that 0300 is kind of enjoyable. Although I will say it's not fast. If you're into assisted opening knives because you love how quickly they deploy, this does not deploy all that quickly. Okay. So lockup and deployment on both of these are great, super reliable. Certainly in both cases you're not at all concerned about them closing on you. The 0300 is faster. The SR1 has that added feature of the locking mechanism and the stainless steel lock bar insert. So both have some extra features the other one doesn't. Both are really good. I think in this case I'm going to give it to the 0300 for the fact that it's assisted. Now if you don't like assisted opening knives, obviously the SR1 is going to be sort of the winner here. And just so you know, the 0300 I think would be great if it could be de-assisted, but it's not something that can be easily done. Now let's move on to the handle. Again, these handles are quite a bit different, so there's going to be some major things. Now both of them are comfortable, both of them have good ergonomics. However, there are a few standout features. One is in the 0300 you're getting titanium frame lock. It's really nice, a lot of pride of ownership in that high-end titanium material. Of course, titanium frame locks are known to be very strong. Titanium performs very well in this particular use. The other side is G10, again very strong, very grippy, very reliable, and beautiful 3D machining. You know, this is not just flat, it's very nicely contoured, fits your hand really well, very comfortable to use in pretty well every grip, okay? Very, very comfortable blade, very, very comfortable, very ergonomic handle, and so a real win on the handle for the 0300. Now, guess what? The SR1 also has a pretty unique handle in that it is milled from a solid piece of aluminum or a solid piece of titanium if you go to the titanium option. The handle also does have a glass breaker here. And having broken a lot of glass, I can tell you that these glass breakers will function as long as you hit the right part of the window. Okay, you want to hit it out by the edge, especially the bottom edge or the top edge by the what I would call the B post on the car, the back part. Okay, so does have a glass breaker. I would say obviously this is a deep carry clip. This is not a deep carry clip. Where I really see the significant difference in these is in terms of grippiness. The textured G10 and titanium is very, very grippy. You really get a hold on this knife with the texture of it. Now this knife, it's not as grippy at all. The aluminum does have these really attractive lines milled into it. They're attractive, they're not terribly functional. They're actually quite slick, and I even find sometimes I'll have a hard time opening the knife in certain conditions because of the fact that I can't grip the handle well enough to open that up. Okay, that is of course never an issue with the 0300. And so both of these handles have pluses and minuses. Obviously the 0300 is a little heavier, it's not as deep carry. Let's see, lanyard hole, neither one of these lanyard holes is exceptionally large, so I think they're pretty much a tie. But overall, I've got to give the handle to the 0300. It is more comfortable and much grippier than the SR1. I like the SR1 handle. I would just wish there was something that they could do to make it a little grippier in hand, okay? By the way, I've never messed with this particular glass breaker, but I have messed with a few, and of course they do work. They're meant for a car. A car has tempered glass, okay, which means when it breaks, it's going to explode into a million pieces, which are not going to cut you. Never use a glass breaker on a knife, especially like this, the way I'm about ready to use it, on a house window, because you'll cut yourself to ribbons, okay? So that's my warning about glass breakers. Anyway, back to the comparison. Again, I think the handle, I've got to give it to the 0300. Overall, these are both fantastic blades. I really like both. I find both of them extremely useful. I would say the SR1 leans a little bit more toward a gentleman's folder because of the slick handle, because of the overall look and fit and finish of it. Beautiful, beautiful knife. Really a piece of artwork. Maybe the 0300 is not as beautiful. Now I love the way this one looks in the black wash, but it's maybe not quite as attractive, and certainly it's much heavier. But I can tell you this, although I have said one wins over the other in different situations, I love both of these knives. I carry both of them a lot, and in my mind, They're pretty equal. I hope this video has helped you, even though it maybe hasn't helped me to come down solidly on one or the other. All right, lots of fun doing this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll tell you, that's really the reason I do these videos. If you're still watching, I'm not interested in selling one of these knives, right? Not for myself and not for anyone else either. I do these videos because I like knives and I want them to be entertaining. I want you to watch this, even if you never buy one of these, I just want you to enjoy the video, okay? So there you go. We'll talk to you later.